And hello, everyone. Why are you laughing at me while I'm starting the show? We're going forward with this. Beyond and hello, everyone. This is Podcast Beyond, episode 699, the big one, as you've all been waiting for. I'm your host, Jonathan Dornbush of IGN's weekly PlayStation show. I'm joined this week by Brian Altano.
I was laughing because we do the countdown thing at the beginning, and I wasn't sure, should I smile? Like, what face should I, freeze on? It's always tricky.
We're also joined this week by Lucy O'Brien.
Yeah, it was funny just because there was, this really deadly silence that went on for way too long. Anyway, hello.
That's what I like to bring, the energy to the show. Deadly silence. I think the listeners and viewers really love it. Also, we're joined this week for the first time by Colin Stevens. Colin, thank you so much for joining us.
Hiya, thank you for having me.
Of course. Colin, you're on our social team here at IGN. I, of course, first knew you as a news freelancer when I was on the news team. We worked together there, and now you're one of our intrepid social team, keeping our wonderful, as the kids say, dank memes alive. But for those who may not know you, are this...
Go and write another poem, Dorno.
Oh, don't worry. I have a dramatic reading coming up very soon.
Thank God.
For those who may not know you, do you want to give a little bit of just, your PlayStation history, if you will?
So I'm Colin. I am a social copy coordinator for IGN, so I basically just make Spider-Man and Kirby memes all day, and it's great. It's the greatest job I could possibly imagine. And I just wanted to thank you for bringing me on for episode 699, because it's the sexiest of all triple-digit numbers, so thank you. Thank you for thinking of me. I get it. And yeah, PlayStation, huge PlayStation fan. I never actually had an original PlayStation, so a lot of my history is me going back and playing PlayStation games and learning about them with fresh eyes. But PS2 onwards, just a huge PlayStation fan. Can't get enough.
Nice. Well, we're glad to have you on. We're going to be talking about Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart in a little bit, which I know you're a fellow Ratchet & Clank fan. Before we do a little bit of house cleaning, this is episode 699. We're off to just a wonderfully weird start. Obviously, episode 700 is the next episode. I don't have official plans to confirm with you right now as we're speaking, but we do want to put something together special, and we're working to do that. Please stay tuned to all of our social feeds. I'll make sure to plug us at the end as well, but I'm at JM Dornbush. Train's going by my window. Brian is at Agent Bizzle. Lucy is at Luce O'Brien. And actually, Colin, are you at Colin D. Stevens? Am I correct?
I'm at IGN.
Okay, we'll take that one. Yeah, that one works too.
Colin D. Stevens is my actual account.
Excellent. Well, definitely keep an eye on all of us on Twitter, including Colin. But yeah, stay tuned for news about that. The other thing I did want to say before the show starts, though, is, I don't have a poem to celebrate the last 600th episode, but thankfully our good friends at Microsoft gave me a little bit of a piece to read for you. And so I wanted to start it off with some excerpts from Microsoft's review of The Last of Us Part 2.
What? Around.
Thank you. The Last of Us Part 2, like its predecessor, is first and foremost a narrative adventure game. Fact. This is unlike Naughty Dog's other key franchise, Uncharted, debatable, where the narrative, while very well told, is there more to service the action-adventure gameplay. I'm going to move through this because it's an extremely long piece, but here we go. The gameplay in The Last of Us Part 2 is an expansion and notable improvement upon the previous game, which gave players little freedom of choice in the moment-to-moment gameplay. Most levels in the first game played out like little combat puzzle boxes, where there was a narrowly predetermined right way to finish the mission, which made the effective strategy feel forced upon you. In this new game, the combat areas are significantly larger, the enemy AI greatly improved, and the number of ways you can clear a space or just avoid it altogether are greatly enhanced. That said, Naughty Dog still can't seem to make decent gun combat in any of their games, and this one is no exception. Luckily for them, it fits in with the game's overall theme and pushes the player toward using stealth over head-on. Head-on doesn't have a word after it. One big gripe about the moment-to-moment gameplay...
It's head-on. It's head-on. I know what that means.
Was really with the game's inventory system. The inputs for weapon switching are all located on the D-pad, and there was no quick switch between current and previous weapons. So unless you've got an additional thumb on your left hand, then you're going to have to take your thumb off the movement controls on the left stick in order to switch weapons, which was notably frustrating during the more frenetic combat sequences. Players certainly have every right to their subjective feelings and opinions on the game's narrative, on Naughty Dog's choice to make players play as a diametrically opposed protagonist, or in the game's final contentious outcome. But as someone who cares deeply about the evolution and expansion of what storytelling and interactive entertainment can be, that's in all caps, those things ultimately matter less than how incredibly well Naughty Dog have crafted and delivered the story that they, all caps, wanted to tell. Not every game's designs can support the level of visual detail they produce, and not every team has the money or talent needed to produce it, but this game sets a new bar for what we should hope to be able to achieve going into a new generation of consoles. There's more to this review, but I felt it was worth pointing out. This comes from some of the documents that have been coming out of the massive Epic versus Apple trial that's currently happening right now in relation to Fortnite and the App Store and iOS in general and stores like that. Microsoft was involved pretty heavily in regard to their storefronts and Xbox and Microsoft, and so their sort of internal confidential review, recent release highlights, I guess internal impressions of the game, was passed around and is now publicly available as part of these documents. And I mostly just wanted to share that because it's a very funny thing to see Microsoft describing how they felt about The Last of Us Part 2. I don't know how you all felt, Lucy. Maybe I'll start with you on this. Just start there, but it's an interesting read.
It is an interesting read. I don't want to get too inside baseball with like, lol, this was so badly written, because kudos to Microsoft for actually like, you know, broadening its horizons, paying attention to what the competition is doing, and you know, giving a critical analysis for the company to read. I mean, full respect. I think that's awesome. The review itself is written like a robot wrote it, for sure. There are some phrases in here that are very meaningless, but, you know, a lot of buzzwords that float around in reviews. What was the one that bothered me so much? God, I've been banging on about it.
The art of narrative storytelling.
The art of narrative storytelling. Truly a meaningless phrase for the ages. I want to put that on a t-shirt. I want it tattooed on my ass. I freaking love how ridiculously redundant that phrase is. But again, just shout out to Microsoft. I think it's awesome. I would love to read, you know, Sony's review of Halo Infinite when it comes out. I really want that. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's good to know that this is happening, right? Like that there are internal sort of documents where people within the company are assessing products that their competitors are making. I'm with you all that this reads like a 90s video game magazine review. Like it even has like, both Mike and John completed the game. It's like, good job, boys. You did it. But it's also like this, I mean, the fact that it's like it takes lawsuits for this stuff to come out, and Rebecca Valentine at IGN put together this great piece for us, basically talking about how weirdly secretive the video game industry is. And like, I don't know, we all watch movies and we read, you know, you probably see press releases about, you know, the Marvel movies and like stuff on THR and EW and Variety and stuff like that. And the movie side of things is always just like, hey, we're making a movie. Here's the director. Here's the cast. Here's the plot. Here's the release date. Here's the poster. Cool. And on the video game side, they're always like, tee-hee-hee. Like we put a logo on a balloon and we hit it behind a countdown clock in a building. Can you find it? And you're like, just tell me what you're doing. Like 6 years later, they're like, the reveal is here. Like, it's so stupid. And I think it's like to the detriment of the sort of like product development cycle to know so little for so long. But when these lawsuits happen, all this crazy stuff spills out. And this is one of those little tidbits that I feel like we haven't really seen since like the Sony hack happened a couple of years ago, which notoriously brought on tons of weird stuff like the failed joint partnership between them and the Nintendo Mario movie they were developing internally and a bunch of other fascinating things. So yeah, I love this stuff even if it is bizarre.
Yeah, that hack, I think the thing I most remember is just Channing Tatum's like all caps text to like high up Sony executives being like, we should do the Men in Black movie together, it would be amazing. And then it's just like, okay, he's just that dude in real life. But yeah, this is I didn't want to go too in depth on the trial because it's still ongoing and we'll likely get more to give a fuller picture. But as Brian has said, go check out the whole news team. Rebecca Valentine's piece was really great. Her, Matt Kim, Kat Bailey, Julia Alexander, everyone's putting in a ton of work to cover this thing exhaustively because there's a ton coming out of it. And as you said, like, there is so much secrecy around these things that this happens isn't necessarily a shock, but the fact that we get to see it and get a glimpse and understanding of how Microsoft views arguably the biggest game from their direct competitor over the last year or two, it's a fascinating insight, especially along with the trial where the judge is trying to make a very clear effort to understand video games, but doesn't understand the full scope of the industry, and is very much confused by why everything is so goddamn redacted. It's
also
wonderful.
kind of it reads like this whole review reads like somebody you know but you don't really like did something great.
They don't want
So
to
happy
admit it.
for you.
Yeah.
You're moving to Austin for your dream job. I mean, it gets hot there. That's like it's like kind of catty, which
it's It's really funny. Before we move on to a bit of news, I do just want to bring up one last thing, literally, and that is these sneakers, which are PG5s. These are the latest Paul George and PlayStation collaboration. We have a news article up on IGN with a bunch of more in-depth photos of these guys. I'm just going to wave them around on the camera for a little bit, but these are the latest collaboration. We've previously shown off the ones that were modeled on the original PlayStation. These are modeled obviously on the PS5, the sort of like blue and white aesthetic. It might be hard to see on this video quality, but some of the detail is like the PlayStation face buttons, kind of like the DualSense on the shoes themselves. It's really cool, and there's like a little PS5 logo there. There's just a whole bunch of like little cool details about these, so definitely go check that out on the website, and you can see more in-depth photos, and you can apparently get them in NBA 2K. takeaways from the state of play.
Yeah, just to touch on the visuals really quick again. It kind of reminds me of when Sony previewed and released Ratchet and Clank Future Tools of Destruction on the PS3. It's like that was also one of like the first big post-launch exclusives for that system, and it was like a really big like graphical showcase. And like what this looks like now, what like I thought that looked like back in like 2006 or whatever when it came out, I'm sure it kind of looks a little bit gnarly now compared to how I thought it did. But like, yeah, it's just Insomniac is so good at sort of showcasing what a system can do early on in its life cycle, and it's been so long since we've gotten like a full-blown Ratchet and Clank game. I was looking into this, and last what I would consider to be like brand new full-length Ratchet and Clank game was probably A Crack in Time, and that was 2009. So it's basically been 12 years since we've had a full-blown, brand new, not remade Ratchet and Clank game, and this is like exactly what I wanted in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, it we've had Into the Nexus in between the 2016 remake reboot sort of thing, but yeah, this feels so expansive, and I think that was one thing that the state of play got across really well. And Colin, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it, but it was, seeing not just that we'll have Ratchet's main adventure, Rivet's main adventure, but all these little side things. Like there will be pocket dimensions that are totally side to the story. There will be Glitch, which seems to be this new robot as well, who will have their own side missions. There will be flight combat. There will be, these major set pieces in these big cities and everything. They just seem to keep adding all those little things. There will obviously be some like Clank specific gameplay as well. It feels like, as you were saying, the full length adventure I've been craving from Ratchet and Clank for a very long time, and I'm so glad they're like getting the chance to make it now.
It's also, I mean, like I would never describe Spider-Man and Miles Morales as games that held back Insomniac by any means, but they are ultimately playing in somebody else's playground, which is, a billion-dollar IP owned by a massive studio that's been around for ages. And so I do think that there is probably somewhat of a ceiling on how bizarre or weird or creative they can get with that world. Obviously, they go nuts with it, and Miles especially is just like there's just insane things happening in terms of particle effects and lighting and just creativity up the wazoo. But this is a whole new world. This is an IP that is owned and operated by them, and it feels like they're just like throwing everything at the wall, and it's working. Like they basically can go in and just say, hey, what if we did this? What if we did that? What if we kept stacking more and more powers and objectives and moves and just crazy unique ideas, enemy design. Like they're just going totally bonkers with it. They're really going for it, and I love that about it.
Yeah, it's really thrilling to see this, and we've in past previews gotten a look at the portal jumping gameplay and all of that stuff. But I think what's really exciting here is to see that it's more than just that as like a gimmick. Like there is so much more going on here, and Colin, I'm a little curious to hear just your thoughts on like the general gameplay that we saw with some of the weapons and the landscapes that we saw, the environments. How did all that strike you as a longer time Ratchet and Clank fan?
Yeah, so I had played the Ratchet and Clank PS4 game again because Sony like made it its life goal to make sure that game was free in as many ways as possible for people to play it. And what struck me was like how sort of planted you are in that game and in really all previous Ratchet and Clank games. For a video game where you have like a rocket-powered robot on your back that like can shoot you up in the air, it really does sort of have you on the ground a lot, and you can strafe and you can do flips and stuff. But like the big thing here that like really got me excited was sort of like the dash mechanics. It seems like it's so much more fluid and so much more like energetic and quick paced, because you really didn't have that sort of dodge mechanic, at least I don't recall in past Ratchet and Clank games. So having that, I think, will make things like way more frenetic, way more fast paced, and then combining that with like these amazing weapons. There's I can't remember what they called it, but the one where it basically just turned everything into plants when it used a sprinkler on them, and it looked gorgeous. And there was some grenade that like they threw it and exploded, and that explosion looked like it could have been from like Raya and the Last Dragon, like some server farm, like generated Disney movie. And like it just everything seems like it's running on all cylinders.
I think that's doing that movie a disservice, Colin. Come on.
Okay, well, regardless,
we'll save that for our Disney show. course.
The topiary something or other. I thought for a second.
Sprinkler was just up there. Yeah.
That's $1 million word. I can't keep that in my brain. The gameplay really just looks, excuse the pun, ratcheted up quite a bit. So I'm really excited to get my hands on this.
Clank it up. I think that's one thing that was exciting to me, and I think Brian maybe speaks a little bit to your point about like the whole Spider-Man of it all. Like, as much as we love those games, Spider-Man's list of gadgets could only be so much because it's in a grounded world. It's based on what Peter can produce and all that stuff, and the things he has at his disposal. Here it can just be whatever silly idea they have. This is a series that is famous for its disco ball throwing guns and the sheepinator or the goatinator if you level it up. Like they are known for the wackiest, weirdest things, and to see something like the topiary sprinkler, like I hope that's just an indication of several more weird ones to come, because it's so fun to see the way they can make combat be hilarious at the same time it is like challenging and rewarding to go through.
That said, Avengers Endgame did end with, hundreds of people jumping through purple circles, and they are going into multiverse territory in the MCU, so potentially we could get a Spider-Man game where he also jumps through purple circles.
That's what all games should have more of. Purple circles is, I think, the key back of the box feature that you want to list.
It's so hard for you guys to say, isn't it?
Purple circles, yeah.
Yeah, hard as.
It feels like one of those warm-ups that you would do before a play, like the...
It's less the R's and more just our failed education system.
Yeah, that's probably the better way to put it. We're a little bit over a month out to Ratchet and Clank, and I'm sure we'll see more before then, or hopefully around launch be able to talk about it quite a bit. But overall this was something that I think we've needed for a long time, because we've been pretty much just relying on that single extended gameplay look for the last 6-7 months, which, as great as it looked, was very much like an E3 slice where you're like, I can see what the game could be, but I don't have a full understanding of it. This felt more like here's the scope of the game, and it just seems so layered, so dense. And shout out to them also for putting it up there toward the end of the state of play, but saying that they'll have more to show off later. The accessibility features in the game seem very extensive, and I'm happy that they made the time for that. That they said they're going to give more time to that later on. I think Spider-Man, and especially with Miles Morales and Remastered, got a lot of very great acclaim, as they should have, for their suite of accessibility features, and I'm glad to see that that's coming to Ratchet 2. Just because even both of these I think are such mass appeal sort of franchises, or can be, that I think that's a great goal for them to strive for.
I also think it's important to
not look at this game anymore.
Fair enough.
I'm sold.
I think a couple of episodes back I was having a bit of a whine about how PlayStation wasn't sort of giving PS5 owners or those looking to buy a PS5 this year enough to kind of chew on post launch, and this is really scratched that itch. I mixed my metaphors, but it really in terms of I keep going back to in terms of promising what the PS5 can do now, and the potential that it has. This is just such a showcase for it. To me, this is a real system seller of a showcase, and hopefully the game delivers.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially, I think a lot of the story of this next gen launch has been, it's a lot of cross-gen, so you don't need to worry, especially while these things are so hard to find. But I think with Returnal, Demon's Souls, and now especially, I think Ratchet & Clank really is the one that is here's the start of where things are really going in next gen. It's really, really exciting to see.
Hopefully they can fix the other problem of allowing people to buy their console.
Buy the thing. We'll get there. Probably just not soon. Before we move on, in terms of a more sort of in-depth look at the accessibility stuff, I did just want to shout out a former guest of the show, Laura Kate Dale, when the State of Play happened, did a phenomenal in-depth Twitter thread about all the accessibility features. So if you want a sort of closer look at someone, especially more involved and entrenched in that community, and about looking into accessibility in gaming, go check out Laura's Twitter feed. You you can find them at Laura K. Buzz for more. And it was a really, really great, insightful feed. Moving on from there, before we leave Insomniac completely, did just want to briefly mention Sony has apparently recently trademarked Sunset Overdrive, which of course so far has only been an Xbox exclusive, came to PC in 2018, which was before Sony owned or acquired Insomniac completely in 2019. But, it's another sort of breadcrumb of hope for Sunset Overdrive maybe not being dead, or for at least a port of some kind coming to PlayStation. If you're an Insomniac fan and you have either an Xbox or a PC that can play it, I can't recommend going to check out Sunset Overdrive enough. Like, sort of speaking to the creativity that Brian was mentioning of getting to play within their own wheelhouse, and just getting to, like, go all out with just a strange, weird, fun, really kinetic and exciting experience. Sunset Overdrive is such a great game.
Yeah, I feel like they went with Xbox originally because Sony wanted to own the rights to the IP and they wanted to retain them independently, correct?
I believe that was the story. I'd have to double check, but I remember that being at least some of why Insomniac took a little bit of a break from their PlayStation relationship. I think at least from the interviews and stuff that was given at the time, yeah.
Yeah, I really hope this game makes it to PS5. It's so awesome and totally slept on. I think people ignored it at the time because, I don't think Insomniac's always been fantastic, but their buzz is at a different level these days. And so I think that there was a lot of excitement around this, patent reveal, because this is hot off of Ratchet and Clank and Miles Morales and Spider-Man, and now people are like, oh yeah, it's that studio. That's what they do. So hopefully people, I love when games like this get a second chance, because it is so awesome, and I feel like not enough people played it. So I really hope it gets another one.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sean Layden said at the time of the acquisition that it wasn't a massive focus. Again, this was back in 2019, saying Sunset Overdrive was great for Insomniac at the time, but now, where their attention is towards Spider-Man and Ratchet and Clank. What I would like to see is a remake of this, and that takes advantage of the PS5 and introduces Sunset Overdrive to a new audience, because one of the problems with the original release was that just not enough people played it. And I would love to see more people play it on a more advanced console, and then potentially see what they can do with the with the IP from there. So I'm not in a great hurry to see some kind of sequel from Insomniac. I think, as you said, Altano, their intentions are, I think, they've evolved since then. But it would be great to see this expanded to a new audience and then see what we can do with it.
Yeah, it's I totally agree with you. I think it needs a reintroduction, especially on PlayStation, before they moved on to a sequel. But it's another little bit of hope, especially alongside the game's director Drew Murray recently rejoining Insomniac Games after being at the Initiative Microsoft studio working on Perfect Dark for a little while. He's rejoined Insomniac, so perhaps there is hope in Sunset Overdrive. But for now, you'll need an Xbox or a PC to play it. But hopefully that changes later on. Moving forward with a little bit of news, did just briefly want to mention, before we get into some stuff we've been playing and whatnot, PlayStation has announced they've acquired a minority interest in Discord, and there will be sort of a PlayStation and Discord integration coming sometime next year. So PlayStation has not fully acquired Discord. They're still, their own company and able to work with other companies as well, but this sort of came after a lot of reports that Microsoft was interested in buying out Discord, and then PlayStation, via a blog post by Jim Ryan, kind of came in and was like, we're actually friends now. And we saw them sort of discussing the plans for the future and what that will entail. We don't have a full scope of it, but essentially they want to connect Discord, as it says in the blog post, quote, with your social and gaming experience on PlayStation Network. Our goal is to bring the Discord and PlayStation experiences closer together on console and mobile starting early next year, allowing friends, groups, and communities to hang out, have fun, and communicate more easily while playing games together. I do want to hear all of your thoughts, but just to briefly say, I've been using Discord more and more as a part of my gaming life, whether it's chatting with people for multiplayer or just what people are playing and whatnot. It's become more and more a facet of that. And PlayStation's party system has always been a little bit, I think, contentious with the general PlayStation fan base. It's not always been the most loved feature. So I think them saying, well, rather than us keep trying to tweak this thing that people don't love, we'll just partner with the people who obviously are one of the most used platforms for that, I think is just a very smart, sensible move.
Yeah, anything that unifies communication is always going to be a plus. I think it's extremely smart to do it this way, and as you say, Dorno, just going to where the gamers are instead of appealing to bring them towards a different mode of communication. This is very smart. This is Sony listening to the audience, looking at where the audience is. I think it's there's not a huge amount to say about it other than it's a very, very good business move, and it's also a great consumer-fronted move as well.
Yeah, Discord is awesome. It's it's been a savior in the pandemic. I don't know how we would have done this pandemic 10 years ago with just crappy versions of Discord. We're literally on Discord right now. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I would love to see PlayStation integrate with it. That's great. Do it.
The show wouldn't probably be happening if it was without Discord. So yeah, it's definitely an exciting thing to see, and I think speaks to their sort of emphasis on partnerships over immediate acquisitions. But it's an exciting thing to continue seeing. Before we move into what we're playing, I did just briefly want to mention, as silly as timing is, Returnal is set to get an update today. With the details of what that update will entail. We don't know what that is as we're recording. We're recording, unfortunately, about an hour before that update will be announced. So obviously, if it's anything big, you can find coverage of it on IGN or on your PlayStation, but I was amused by the fact that the update came with the news that, or the warning of, make sure you either have finished a run or turn off auto updates, because obviously I think one of the biggest conversations around Returnal that's popped up since its launch has been the fact that there are no save states. If you're in the middle of a run, you're locked into that run. You can't save it and put it down for later, other than in rest mode. I think it's sort of put into very sharp relief the want for a quick resume feature on PlayStation more than anything, to avoid this in general. But obviously, I think people are hoping for a save feature. I would be shocked personally if they were able to add it that quickly. That feels like a pretty major implementation that I think could come down the line in a month or two, maybe, or a little bit longer. But I cannot imagine a week after launch them being able to functionally have that ready to go.
Yeah, this has been kind of a thing. It feels like it's once again trudged up that ancient and terrible, awful, toxic argument about, accessibility and easy mode, and things get very gatekeepy there. I feel like this is a slightly more muted version of that conversation because from the jump, Housemarque said, hey, use rest mode. We're actually imploring you to use rest mode in the middle of a run. This is not one of those things where you have to sit down and hold your piss until you finish. They were like, there's a solution here, but then they're also beaming auto updates to the game that were canceling out people's runs. PlayStation 5 itself was updating and rebooting the rest mode stuff. I'm with you. Quick resume on Xbox is awesome. It's like 10 or 11 games. You can unplug your system on Series X, and I don't know how that works, but it just remembers. And so I would like them to see implement something like that here. I was thinking a lot about, I was in a meeting about roguelikes with a bunch of IGN folk the other day, and I was talking about Binding of Isaac, which is, one of the best roguelike games ever made. And it does a really interesting, it handles this scenario very interestingly in that you hypothetically do get a save state. You can launch back into where you were, but once you do that, it's gone. So, I think so you don't have people save scumming and basically cheesing their way through the game, which personally I don't care if you do, because this is ultimately a single player game. So maybe disable that for the leaderboards or whatever, but I don't care about that part. But in terms of just bringing you back to where you were, I feel like that's the best solution for it. Housemarque said they're reading feedback about it, which means that this wasn't a straight up no. This is only for hardcore gamers, because if they're already telling you, use rest mode, that means they have a foot in the door on the idea of being a little bit open to being okay with this being a feature added down the line. But I'm with you, Jonathan. And I don't know how games are designed, but this feels like a decision that was made very early on in the development process. and it could take some time to get back to where it needs to be. That said, if you're looking for easy mode in the meantime, there's a Reddit thread going around today where somebody figured out that if you plug in a USB keyboard on your PS5, a thing I've never thought to do, you can type in old school cheat codes. And
I saw that, yeah.
Like, start with special guns and reboot on certain runs and stuff like that. So that's what you're looking for. Go for it. Have at it. It's your game. You bought it. I don't care what you do with it. I'm not going to gatekeep you. Go have fun with it.
Just to hop off that very quickly, actually breaking, the patch notes did come out early, so cool, I can actually say them. They don't have any mention of save state stuff. I think, as we were saying, it's very understandable that that'll be later. Largely, it's fixing an issue where certain trophies might not unlock under specific gameplay conditions. People are having trophy issues. Unfortunately, the trophies will need to be replayed to unlock. Stability fixes addressed for crash. You got to do it again. For crashes and sort of like stuttering hangs in the game, people who pre-ordered had multiple suits that you could unlock, a thing I had no idea existed, but people were unable to get them, or they were blocking other item collection and door opening. Fixed incorrect healing behavior when resting in your ship. Configuration changes to increase the number of scout corpses available in all biomes. This is a thing that a few of us who were playing pre-launch saw a lot of other people's dead Selenians on the ground, saw where they died, the cause of it. You could run into them and it would cause a new encounter. Those seem to just kind of disappear for most players when the game actually launched. Those are seemingly integrated back in. Fixed issues with certain custom controller mappings and other fixes and improvements. So yeah, as we were saying, I think any sort of feature like that, I would not expect to come, a couple weeks after launch. I think this is something that, if it does come, will be a couple months, weeks at best, but probably a few months down the line, unfortunately.
I had some players on Twitter tell me that they had this borderline game-breaking bug where they weren't able to go through certain doors. So hopefully, it sounds like there's something in the patch notes about doors. Hopefully,
yes,
the doors are good now.
Yes.
I like when the doors work in video games.
It's nice when the doors in a game where you have to go through a lot of doors do in fact work. But as we learned from Naughty Dog and several other people on Twitter, doors are notoriously difficult to make in video games. Moving on from there, though, just to get into a little bit of what we've been playing right now. Colin, I want to start with you as the newest guest on the show. What have you been playing recently that you've been enjoying?
I have been playing every Resident Evil game. Every mainline Resident Evil game. I'm extremely excited for Village. The reviews just came out for it this morning. Our reviewer, Tristan, gave it an 8 for great, which means it's a great game. So if you're excited about it, you should probably pick it up and play it. But as I think all of you might have been in this meeting with me, but I kind of embarrassingly revealed that my first Resident Evil was Evil 5. Yeah, such a weird place to start.
I was there, Colin. I remember it.
Well, I had rented it, and me and my best friend from childhood played through almost the entire game in one sitting. And that game co-op is pretty fun. It's maybe not an amazingly well-designed game, but it is pretty fun co-op. And then my experience with Resident Evil had been so scattershot. I tried playing 4 a few times, but I was too scared. And I kept buying it, thinking that I'll be less scared this time. And the third time I bought that friggin' I finally beat it, and now it's one of my favorite games of all time. It's in my top 10 favorite games. I adore Resident Evil.
A lot of therapists say that that's a good solution for folks.
And so yeah, my experience was so scattershot that I have never played through it in order. And one of the cool things about Resident Evil is all the mainline entries really do sort of progress chronologically. So I literally started at 0 with Resident Evil 0, and I've just been playing all the way through, and I beat 7 3 days ago, and so I'm all revved up and ready to go for Village.
Well, I need
to... 6 too?
I did.
Okay. What was your favorite, and what was your least favorite?
Of all the Resident Evil games?
Yes.
Oh, easy. It's the traditional answer. 4 is my favorite, 6 is my least favorite.
Okay, yeah.
So this is bizarre because it's not that bizarre. I mean, there's a brand new Resident Evil game coming out this week, so I think we both got bitten by this.
I'm playing 7 also, guys. What's going on?
I'm a gigantic Resident Evil fan, and I just finished a feature for IGN, 7 Things You Don't Know About Resident Evil, so it got me like kind of replaying a bunch of the games, and I realized there's a couple of them that were blind spots to me. 5 I played through once when it first came out, and really didn't like. I was just like really angry at it for taking all of the sort of ramping up all the most like kind of actiony parts in the last third of Resident Evil 4 and turning that into a whole game. And then 6 I literally never played, and so I just replayed 5 like a week ago, and liked it a lot more. There's a lot of stuff that is definitely not aged well. But then I'm actually playing through 6 as we speak for the very first time, and it is completely bizarre. It is such a weird departure from everything else. But like 2 or 3, I would say like 2 hours in a Leon's campaign, it started to click a little bit, and I was like, oh, there's actually some really interesting ideas here, some really cool settings, some really like kind of fun boss fights. The whole game is bizarre because you're just running around, like everything is done on your cell phone, and it's super ragdoggy. Ragdolly. There's like a dodge move, and everything feels off. Like everything after coming off of 4 and 5, which feel like spiritual successors. 6 is such a bizarre departure. But as a whole, the franchise is so weird, and I'm like actually hard pressed to find a video game franchise that's this all over the place. It goes from fixed camera perspectives to kind of over the shoulder stop and shoot third-person shooters with action-oriented sequences, to FPS games, to like survival horror. There's remakes, demakes in the middle of all of it. Like it's super weird to like see. It's not like Lucy, you're watching all the Fast and Furious movies right now. Those are like ostensibly like similar. Like there's a lot of like sort of like there's obviously the quality goes all over the place there, but in terms of like genre and stuff like that, you're like there's a theme here that we're following. Resident Evil is so weird to replay. Like they're all over the place.
I agree, and that's one of the reasons why I love the Resident Evil series. However, I am the same as you, Altano. I played everything, apart from maybe the most obscure, maybe DS games. They were Resident Evil DS games, right? Or am I thinking that?
Yeah, it's a touchscreen remake of the original one.
Right. But I started 6 in 2012 when it came out. I played through one campaign because you can play through. You get 3, right? Is it 3?
3 or 4. Yeah.
3 or 4.
From what I've heard, they're getting worse. So
I played through one campaign and I was just like, "This is everything. I hate this." I was like. I haven't touched this since 2012, but I was like, I hate this. This is everything that I don't like about the Resident Evil series amped up to 11. Like, it was not scary. It was just super, like, action-y, bro-y, like, just not what Resident Evil is. I may revisit it upon your verdict just now, because I do kind of want to be that completionist, and I really want to have, like, the full legacy before behind me before I reach Village. But holy shit, that game is rough.
I mean, it had an identity crisis for a while there. I mean, I would argue it still kind of does to some degree, but like there were 2 sort of opposing ideologies of what that franchise should be, and there were people being like survival horror, and there are other people being like Call of Duty, and you're like, what do you want to be? And Resident Evil 6 is just this bizarre jack of all trades of trying to appease all of those things.
Right.
I will say that at the very least, it's incredibly ambitious, and I would rather watch or experience something that's bad, but like really swinging for the fences in a lot of ways, than just like kind of bad and tepid and mediocre run of the mill. But at the very least, I will say that Leon's campaign is interesting. I bought, there was a sale of Resident Evil games on Xbox recently, so I think I bought 6 for like $7, and I'm like, that's about as much as you deserve in 2021.
The bad news is Leon's campaign is probably the best one.
Yeah.
So, the 6 is just really frustrating on a lot of levels, because, there's good stuff in there. There's a lot of really cool creature designs, and, the intersecting stories is, pulled in a pretty interesting way. It's just it completely crumbles under its own weight. Like they try to do too much. It's way too long. Playing through all 4 of those campaigns is just yeesh. Like, get me out of here.
I looked up how long to beat for that game, and it said like 21 or 22 hours, and I was like, oh,
And I want to
why?
Yeah.
I know that the remakes kind of like return to. I know that a lot of people didn't like 3, but I really enjoyed the 3 remake. But I know that the remakes kind of like almost soft rebooted what we loved about the Resident Evil series and hyper focused on what made them great and played a riffed on what made them great in interesting ways. But I do feel like 7 was a true return to. I think 7 more effectively. No, that's a lie, because I think Resident Evil 2 Remake is the best Resident Evil game. But I think in terms of the mainline series, I think Resident Evil 7 did a really good job at bringing the series in step with what like modern survival horror looks like in like the stuff that scares us now and how far we've evolved from the creaky old zombies, while also maintaining of Resident Evil kind of weirdness. I think what's interesting about Tristan's review of 8, and of course, I can't speak to it because I haven't played it, that, they sort of softened the falls out terror of 7. Because 7 was very much like, it had that kind of alien isolation, like, you are being pursued and there is nothing you can do about it. You are absolutely at the mercy of, a terrifying AI. And Tristan's review said, well, they've kind of like, they've dulled that a little bit. And I don't know, I'm curious as to how we're all going to sort of feel about that. For me, I prefer the like white knuckle terror.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you and I are both gigantic horror fans, so like, reading that, I was like a little bit like, oh man, like there are parts of 7 that I still think about it as if they were real places that I visited that I almost crap my pants. Like there were like genuinely like the basement of 7, that weird back swamp house with that old lady walking around. Like I think about that place a lot. Like it's a real place I went to. Like I went on a vacation and I had to stay at a bad hotel. Like that's how I think about that. This is like not really a hot take, but I'm immeasurably excited for 8. I sort of wish it was like a third person game. I don't think the gunplay in these games are particularly good. I revisited 7 recently, and even playing the demos for 8, I'm like, I love everything here, but actually, like, shooting things is not as fun for me. It always feels kind of mushy. And so, I'll play the hell out of it, and I can't wait for it. But I do wish that this was like I'm reading all these things about Resident Evil 4. Tristan's review, the first sentence says, like, first thing I thought I was Resident Evil 4, and I was like, ooh, love it.
Yeah.
But if this was a third-person game, I think I'd be through the stratosphere excited. But, I'm still there. I'm still very high up on it.
Yeah.
Yes. I was listening. I just had to turn my light back on. No, I'm very much there. As I've been playing through 7 in the past week because I never finished it. And even though everyone decries the ending, I just kind of wanted to finish it to a set I did before the game comes out. And I'm totally with you. Like there's the sense of space and atmosphere they build is just so all-consuming and unrelenting, but in a way that I can't get enough of. And so I am very curious to see how the tonal shift back to sort of more of a balance of the scary and the weird will work here. But as someone who hasn't played RE4 yet, I'm curious to see how Village plays out. But yeah, I'm equally excited as all of you are. Lucy, what have you been playing?
Okay, I'll go first. So I've just started playing Dead by Daylight because as a horror fan, I figured like this is a blind spot for me, and they keep introducing new characters from the Hall of Great Horror protagonists, and I'm terrible at it. I haven't figured out the perk system at all. I'm playing it as you would like play it out in a horror scenario. I just run and hide. I don't know how much fun. Have you guys played this?
I have not.
Yeah, playing as the killer is so much fun, and it's just like it's disturbingly like gives you a real rush of power. Like it's like I was playing and I was like, should I be enjoying it this much? Like I'm just like breaking people, screaming and throwing them on hooks and like cackling away to myself.
It's messed up.
It's really messed up. Like that like it really empowers you to be this like evil creature. I'm really digging it. Like I've only just started playing. I've only dipped my toes in. But I would love any tips that you have for getting better, because right now I'm a very messy player. But I'm really digging it. I'm really digging how it feels like playing a horror movie in the best kind of way.
You can tell it was like crafted by people who genuinely care about the genre. I think it's like legit, probably the best asymmetrical multiplayer game out there, and like that's not necessarily my universe, but I love that game. Like I'll hop in every now and then and just do what you did, Lucy, was just like hang teenagers on hooks for a couple hours. Like, I don't know how that made me feel, but why did I enjoy that so much? What does that say?
Well, I've had a stressful day at work. I just need to hang some teenagers on a hook.
And
Lying down.
being a teenager getting stalked by somebody in that game is legit terrifying. Like
It's so
it does
scary.
a really good job of building tension. It does a really good job of making you feel like you're powerless, and all you can really do is run and hide and poop your pants. Great.
And I just quickly wanted to also, just because I saw that Colin's been playing it as well, I started playing Undertale for the first time. I'm sort of just going through these like blind spot games for me, like sort of, piles of shame, I guess. And Undertale is one that I've never played before. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I think it's been hyped up a little too much for me. I was very ready for a sort of meta experience, and while I'm enjoying it, I'm sort of like, okay, what else? What else is there to this? Like I need more. But no, I'm digging it. It's interesting. It's weird. It's just yeah. I'm waiting for it to click, I suppose.
I've had a super similar experience
Right.
to Lucy with this. And the funny thing is, I think we got the same idea to play it at the same time, because we were in that meeting where I revealed my shame of playing Resident Evil 5 as my first Resident Evil. And we were talking about Undertale, and I'm like, I really should play this game. Like, I love Mother and Earthbound, and I know it's quirky, and I love RPGs. And then I looked up alongtobeat.com, and it was like, 5 hours. I'm like, oh yeah, I could definitely beat that before Village comes out. And so I played through it, and I think it's a great game. I think it's super creative and interesting, and I get why so many people adore that game. I just don't think I'm really on that same level of love for it. But I'm really excited for Deltarune in 2087 when it finally comes out.
It's
No,
Go ahead. I was going to just say that it's also a game, I think, and I've only ever played it through once, but it's very much, especially speaking to our former producer, Barrett Courtney, it's very much a game that is predicated on beating it multiple times and seeing the way the game changes per those playthroughs, without spoiling too much for those who haven't played. But yeah, that seems to be a real crux of why people love it so much, but I haven't gotten to that point either, so I get where you guys are coming from.
I feel like it's sort of a victim of its own hype. Not necessarily hype is not really the word I would use for it, but it does feel like there was this like lightning in the bottle in the moment discussion that happened around that game, and how it sort of bucked expectations and diverted what people really thought a game like that could be. And many of us just kind of missed that conversation. So coming in a couple years later, I feel like it was one of those things where I wish I had played it when it first came out. I had people to talk to it about, and I was like, oh my god, did you see this? Did you find this? Because years later, I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, I played it for the first time last year, and I'm totally with you guys. I was like, this is lovely and interesting. Oh wow, look at that. I didn't know you could do that. That's cute. But to be like, oh my god, groundbreaking, revolutionary, I feel like I missed that conversation, and I'm kind of envious of the people that were there for it.
Yeah, me too.
Totally. Before we wrap up, Brian, anything else that you just wanted to give a shout out that you've been playing?
Returnal. I'm madly in love with this game. We've touched on patch notes and stuff briefly, but I do just want to say that what an absolute delight this game is. Sorry, it's just like Okay, let me gather my thoughts. I adore bleak, weird, hard sci-fi. I love horror. I love sort of just empty, desolate, dystopian hellscapes full of horrible aliens. I love shmups. Like, this is what a wonderful, incredible convergence of things that I just deeply, deeply adore. I was like a few hours in this game, and I was like, I don't even understand how I could like this game anymore. And then they were like, oh, you get like a beam katana lightsaber. I was like, are you kidding me? This is so extremely my I love this so much. It hasn't really reared its head for me in terms of like the frustrating end game parts of it yet. I'm still taking my time. This is a game that I feel like is best played with really nice headphones. The sort of like the marriage of DualSense and 3D audio in this game creates such a such a distinctly next gen feeling that one of those things that I feel like this is the first time I've really been like, okay, the PS5 is really singing right now in terms of what it's capable of doing. The little noises that it makes when like there are all these little audio cues that happen through vibrations on DualSense, such as emptying a clip. It goes like, and it's just like one of those things that like I implore you to play this game with headphones on, with the DualSense all charged up, keep all the features going, but then also take your headphones off and do a run just listening to your controller, because the amount of things that it is like information it's feeding you just through haptic feedback is brilliant, and I feel like they're not really getting the credit they deserve for that right now. I hope this is a new benchmark for what developers can do with those things. It's the kind of thing that if really people start firing on all cylinders on that front, it's going to make the decision between playing a third-party game on Series X versus PS5 very easy for me, because I think people really need to start utilizing those features because they're fantastic. But I love it. The music's great. The atmosphere is awesome. The gunplay is fantastic. The bosses are creepy and weird and gross. I love big, bleak sci-fi horror stuff, and it's perfect.
What biome are you on?
I'm on the third one.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Just wanted to check. I just to follow up from last week, I'm in the 5th biome still. I'm taking my time, as Brian said, and it's just I think the boss fights are like second to none. They are just some of my favorite boss fights in games in a really long time. They are such a marriage of third-person action and the bullet hell shoot 'em up arcade style that Housemarque knows how to do so well. It's such a treat. And yeah, as you were saying, it uses the PS5 in a way I don't really think a game besides Astros has so far, and I hope that it encourages other devs to do the same, because it does really feel quantifiably different here. But yeah, other than that, we're going to wrap up this week's show. Before we do, just wanted to ask if there's anything that any of you have been working on or really enjoying recently outside of games that you want to plug. Brian, I'll just start with you.
I talked about it before. I just finished this feature, which was worked on by tons of people on the features team. The 7 things you didn't know about Resident Evil. I've also I have a couple of like really cool, fun shoots coming up that I can share with some really awesome people. Hopefully those go well. Part of the reason I'm on green screen today, but yeah, we'll get there.
Lucy?
I want to share the fact that I have been watching the Fast and the Furious movies for the first time. I'm up to 7 now, so I've got 2 left.